Welcome to part 3, updating the layout. So in Plotly, the layout controls the following graph properties, plus several more: the height and width of the graph, the title, the X and Y axis, the legend, margin, and annotations. So let's go ahead and recreate our plot from above, and we'll see that we're going to use this update layout method, which is step 3 of what I proposed on how to create a Plotly graph, to change the height, width, and the title. Let's go ahead and call this. So step 1 is just creating the figure, step 2 is adding the trace, and then step 3 is updating the layout. So the height of the figure has changed to just 400, and this is pixels because this is targeting the web, by 800 pixels, and then we've created a new title for the graph, which is placed over here. Now, when you're using this method, of course, you need to know, all right, what are the possible parameters I can set here, and what are those values that I can set it to? All right, now before I told you to use Shift Tab Tab, and when you look at the documentation, it just doesn't give you what you want. It says you can use a dictionary, so which you can, and you can set the properties with a dictionary, but unless you know but it doesn't tell you what the keys of those dictionary should be. So we can't use our Shift Tab Tab method. Instead, we can go to the reference page of the documentation, and on the left-hand side we have an area for the layout, and so I'm actually on the layout page right here. So it tells you, and it'll go through one by one, like the title, the legend, so for margins. And you can see that many of these properties are nested. So the title is a nested property. So it has font, which itself is also nested. So there's no limit to the number of nested properties a main property can have. And we will set the title along with its font in just a little bit. So this is one way to go ahead and figure out what, how something how the layout works, or how the properties are set. And here's another parameter: show legend, true or false. The legend itself has many properties, so how the legend looks, and it's very deeply nested. Like there's a title in the legend which has a font property, so this is 4 levels in over here. The margins, around the sides of the plot, the left and right, top and bottom margins, how are those set? We use the width and the height, and so forth. So those are, you can definitely get the properties over here and figure out what they are in the documentation. But let's say you want to stay in the notebook. So one way to do this is to actually look at the fig.layout property itself. So if you do fig.layout, all right, so it's only going to show you the ones that you've set, but the way to use this is if you put a dot over here and then you press tab. So this is not fig.update layout. So let me make sure we have that correct. So this is a method. This is the actual property itself, which you can think of as like a dictionary. And if you press tab, you will see there are dozens of these properties. So this you can use this list of properties. And if you select one, if you press Shift Tab Tab, well then you'll get all the properties showing up in your documentation. So this is just a little trick to get the properties to show up. And you can actually set them over here as well. But this is not a method. You don't call a method, and this is just the property itself. We've only set one thing, but if you press Shift Tab Tab, you can see all the ones: the font, the padding, the actual text. You can set a specific position of the title if you want. You can anchor it to left or right side. There's all these different properties for the title. And for nested properties like font, well, then you just go one layer in and you press Shift Tab Tab, and you see that this font property has multiple properties as well: the color, the family, and the size. Okay, so that's one way to kind of figure out what is available. So you start at the outer level, fig.layout. you press tab, you figure out which property you want to set, and it could be a property that is not nested, like width. Yeah, it just sets the property width in pixels. So you just give it some number. It's got to be at least 10, and go from there. So here we have an example of how you can set one of the properties, update layout. We're going to set title, and then you set it equal to a dictionary. So text X, Y, and then font is a nested. So title itself is a nested property. So it has text X, Y, and font, but font is further nested, and we give it these three properties itself: color, family, and size. And then we have it as such like this. So we've centered, or not, yeah, I guess we've specifically placed the title at 0.5, which is just halfway through the paper, and then 0.85 is just these are relative locations, and you'll see that in the documentation when you pull it up. Relative locations on the plot, so 0.5 and 0.85. Plotly calls them paper coordinates. So if you think of it as a piece of paper, this is halfway to the X and 0.85 up in the Y, and you can change them. Anyway, so we changed the font, family, and the font size like that. Of course, if you have a property such as, like say, margin, and you don't know what it is, you can just set it to be something that you can use that trick again where you just set it equal to some value that it is not, and then you can look over here and you can look at the properties, how you can set this. So BLRT and then pad. So let's go ahead and set this one. So B is like the bottom margin. Let's just set 1 for now, just so you can see this. And even if you set this one wrong, this has to be a number. It tells you, so you can keep using this wrong strategy. And here it says you have to set it as an integer or float between 0 and infinity. All right, so we can push this up, like have a bottom margin of 50. Let's make it a little more noticeable. Let's see here, yeah. So now we have this bottom margin of 200 pixels. We have the left margin, let's make it 50 pixels. Can't really tell. Let's see, do another 200 over here. So we have some left margin over here. So you can see how you can find the properties by fig.layout dot and then pressing tab over here. And you can see that's where margin is. You can look at all of them like that. You can even press shift tab, tab. No, you have to actually press dot and then tab, and to figure out all of the properties like such. So you can control many different things. And they're all, the things that you can control are all available right here after layout dot tab. And once you find that thing that you want to control, whatever it is, then you just press shift tab, tab again, and then you can see all the properties that you can set within that nested property. All right, so that's the last step of creating a Plotly graph is the update_layout method.